Hello. Welcome to the lecture series Mobility Analysis and Planning for Human-Scale Cities, organized by the Mobility Lab, University of Tartu. I am Siiri Silm, Associate Professor of Human Geography, University of Tartu, and today is together with me here Age Poom, Associate Professor in Urban Environment, and Martin Hammer, junior researcher in transport studies, and many master students. And I hope that a lot of online participants also. And if you have questions, then we will have time for the discussion after the lecture, and please online ask your questions or write your questions to the chat. And we will ask then the questions after the lecture. And today the lecture is given by Benjamin Büttner. He is a Deputy Head of Chair of Urban Structure and Transport Planning at the Technical University of Munich, where he leads the Accessibility Planning Research Group. And his research focuses on developing intermodal accessibility instruments to support decision-making processes. And he is the head of AIT Urban Mobility Doctoral Training Network. And he is foundation editor-in-chief of the Journal of Urban Mobility and area editor for Accessibility in Networks and Spatial Economics. And he has been appointed vice chair of NECTAR network, which is a network of European communication and transport activity research. And today, Benjamin is talking about 15-minute cities. And now I will give the screen to Benjamin.
Okay, great. So I will start again. Thank you very much, Siiri, for your kind invitation and introduction. And greetings also to Age, to Martin, to everyone in Tartu. Pleased to be here, even though it's remotely, but still a big honor for me to present a bit about my research. I will try to share my screen now. You should be able to see now the Mentimeter. I hope that works. Please join menti.com and put the code in 47182777. I repeat, 47182777. Menti.com. Give you a minute for this. And I would like to learn a bit about you as the audience. And the first thing is, as you might have seen from the announcement, my talk will be about the 15-minute city and flowers, which sounds a bit strange, the link. But I would like to hear from you what's the first thing that comes to mind when you think about the 15-minute city. So whatever you have on your mind, please just put in. There is no wrong, so everything is warmly welcome. All right, so we have the first ones that submit stuff, so it seems to work. That's great. And you can see that the bigger it is, the more people have mentioned it. So there seems to be a consensus on the term of proximity and density. So that's something that the 15-minute city needs. Density of different activities in the most common definition from Carlos Moreno. Carlos Moreno and colleagues are talking about how you can access basic essentials, so activities that you need in your daily life by walking or cycling. So this is something that you also mentioned here. You also mentioned the term accessibility and a link to proximity. This is something where I personally also shifted a bit my research focus. We're doing lots of research now on proximity-centered accessibility. So there are different ways of achieving accessibility. One is by mobility, so investing in mobility infrastructure like high-speed rail, highways, but you could also shift it and focus more on the land use aspect of creating more mixed use, of actually creating shorter distances in opposition to enhancing speed. So that's the proximity-centered accessibility that you also touched here at the beginning. But you also mentioned something like livability, quality of life. Needs to be quiet, needs to be pleasant. There was a person friendliness. So these are the things that we now have to focus on. It's not just about getting from A to B, but we should be able to do this in a very pleasant way, in a safe way for all people, no matter if you're young or old. So we have to take that into account. And this was never the focus before, actually. So we were working a lot with transport engineers that just tried to make it as fast as possible, as efficient as possible. But now we are shifting to this human scale, to a more human-centered planning approach that also this lecture series is on. So I think that's an excellent topic that we have to put much more focus on. So thank you for this. Very nice points. I will have two more, and then I will jump into my slides. Don't worry, I'm happy. I will be able to finish everything within 40 minutes from now. So the next question is, how long does it take you to walk to the nearest supermarket, university, bakery, dentist, park? And here, this is from your actual home location, where you live. How long does it take you approximately to walk? You can also replace the university with a workplace. So if you're not a student anymore and you have to go to office or to work, please just use this instead. All right, so we had a quick participant who already submitted. And here now you can see how dynamically this changes a bit. You can see not very surprising, but supermarket is the amenity which is closest. You can see that university or the office or the workplace, it's very different from people, but that's an activity which you cannot find everywhere, obviously. So mostly there's only you're not free to choose where to go. You don't have a choice. With supermarkets, you can pick many different ones, maybe also discounters or an organic supermarket. So we might also want to look at the differences here. And then you can see bakery, it takes around 13, 14 minutes. Supermarket around 8 to 9. A park takes around 7 to 8, which is nice. A park gets more and more focus on and is getting more and more attention because this is also important for mental health, for exercising, for recharging. And these were also things that normally planners were not putting enough attention on. So that's nice to see that there's quite some access to different amenities, and also parks are close by. Bakery is quite far. In Germany, it would be much closer, but that also differs from one context to the other, which is also interesting, right? And we are not stopping at 15 minutes, so there are also basic essentials, which are fine when it takes a bit longer at the end. But now the question is also, how long are you actually willing to walk or to cycle or to use a micromobility with an e-scooter, for instance, to ride public transport, or to drive a car, or to be accompanying in a car? So the willingness, because as you remember, we started a bit with the 15-minute city. Here we say 15 minutes by walking or cycling. Still, especially if you live further out, not in an urban center, then you might not be able to really fulfill all your basic essentials by just active mobility. So let's also look at different modes before we jump into the presentation. And you can see here, which is quite interesting, and I think also a bit surprising, that most of you are willing to walk longer than, for instance, to ride an e-scooter. So that might have different reasons. It could be that walking is free, and for e-scooters you have to pay. But it could also be that you feel much more unsafe on an e-scooter and are in danger of getting run over by a car, for instance, just to give a random example. So maybe it doesn't feel safe enough. Maybe the infrastructure is not there. While for walking, it might look much more pleasant. Maybe you can go through parks where you can also recharge. Riding public transportation, we have around 20 minutes comparable to cycling. And then driving and accompanying in a car, you're willing to do this in average for 23 minutes, which is interesting. So this is the longest. But with the car at the end, you can make it as comfortable as you like. You can put your own music in. You can have calls. So these are some things, but at the end, it can also create more loneliness. If we go back to the link to the park and the access to the park, here we are not being really able to socialize if we are not sharing a car. Which still has lots of potential, especially if we go a bit further out to the suburbs or to the more rural places. All right, great. So thank you for this little opening. And now I'm happy to jump into the slides. And so I should give a talk about the 15-minute city. So I was curious, what can we actually achieve within 15 minutes? And that's why I asked Google. If you Google this, 15 minutes are not really a lot, but you can do different things, and you can take a look at the little list that Google spits out, and you can see you can handwrite a love note, which is quite nice. Can take a power nap, please not now after lunch. I know it's difficult times now, but please stay awake for another 30 minutes. But you can also paint a flower. And that's what I would like to do with all of you here, painting a flower. This is my favorite artist who unfortunately passed away, Bob Ross, a very famous painter with a very calm voice. And I want to paint flowers with you. And you can see here, this is a flower of proximity. And you might now think, what does a flower has to do with a 15-minute city, with the talk that I was asked to do for the University of Tartu in Estonia. And you can see here, actually, no matter where you go, you will always find different flowers that represents a local context. And for Estonia, we have the cornflower, Centaurea cyanus. And if you look at this, that's the national flower of Estonia since 1988. And it is a symbol of resistance, which signifies the rebellion against the national flag ban during the Soviet oppression. So you can see here, this flower really tells you a story about what happened in Estonia, and why it's important to keep that in mind and to remember it and to use it. It can also be used for medical uses here. It symbolizes the Estonian rural landscape and the cultural importance. And you see that in folk festivals. Here you can see, for instance, the flower that the ladies are wearing. And you can even see it on the currency, on the euro. So if you look closely enough, and if you're lucky enough to get an Estonian euro, you will also find this flower here. So that being said, what the heck is the link to the 15-minute city? So we would like to tell you now the story of how the flowers of proximity make the 15-minute city blossom. And my name is Benjamin Büttner. As Siri already mentioned, I'm heading a research group on accessibility planning. So if you're interested in that, follow us on LinkedIn. And but yet first, let's look a bit about the 15-minute city. And as mentioned before, this is the most famous definition that Carlos Moreno and his colleagues set up, an urban setup where locals are able to access all of their basic essentials at distances that would not take them more than 15 minutes by foot or by bicycle, so actually by active modes. So let's structure this talk on the definition from Carlos and his colleagues. So he talks about basic essentials. So actually, let's look into a bit what are essentials and for whom are they actually important, essential. If we talk about access, what do we mean by access? We need to include universal accessibility or affordability. Are these things that are important and should be acknowledged and taken into account? And then if we talk about the mode, as we did before with the little Mentimeter, is it enough to just talk about active mobility, or should we also take into account other modes like e-scooters, like public transportation? How about intermodal accessibility? These kind of things. And then the elephant in the room, obviously, with the 15-minute city concept. Why is it actually 15-minute cities? And are these 15-minute cities for everyone equal? So if we talk about this, we should look a bit about on proximity. And we did this, and we means Cecilia Silva. And my team, we started some research on proximity-centered accessibility, linked also to the definition that we had at the beginning of the Mentimeter, the first question. And you can see here, we first started talking to experts. Experts means academics from our field, but also planning practitioners. And we asked them, what would you consider nearby? And you can see here that actually over 80% defines nearby within 15 minutes. So 15 minutes walking, more or less, up to 1,200 meters is something nearby. So you can see if we talk with experts, there's quite some agreement on this 15-minute term. The yellow one is 20 minutes, and then the other one is over 20 minutes. If you now, we said, okay, this might be just us, but at the end, we should also take a global perspective and ask people from all over the world. So what we did now, we did a global study with 22 countries involved. We had a survey where over 1,300 people participated, and we asked the same question, basically. And you can still see that almost 3/4 agreed on the 50-minute threshold. They said, yeah, nearby is up to 1,200 meters, which is roughly 50-minute walking in average. However, we also had quite some people that said, no, we can even go further. For instance, in the Netherlands, they said, no, it can be much further. It's still 1,600 meters. We still consider nearby. This is because of the high mode share of cycling. So in the Netherlands, they have a bit of a different impression. However, if we just look at the meters, this might not be enough, because if we check this little diagram, you can see that actually it really differs from one person to the other, how far we can get within 15 minutes. So for the example of the Netherlands cycling, you can see here, actually within 15 minutes, you could reach up over 5 kilometers. So you have a huge catchment of different activities. But if you are an older person, then it will really shrink down, and it will be around 700 meters all of a sudden within 50 minutes. While an average person might be able to capture around 1 kilometer or 1.2 kilometers even. So that means actually we have to differentiate, and maybe just looking at the time is not sufficient. What is also important is that we look at equal access, universal accessibility. So we should plan for urban environments that are step-free, that are barrier-free, where people can move freely, basically. So you can see we have this concept of mobility justice, where we want to make everyone being able to fulfill their daily needs, to access their basic essentials, no matter if they're in a wheelchair, no matter if they're young or old. Here we should plan for. So we then checked again. There are lots of 50-minute city concepts or 20-minute neighborhoods or X-minute approaches. Also within cities. So they already start implementing these kind of concepts. But do they actually consider vulnerable travelers, the ones that I just mentioned? And you can see here, we found quite a number of case studies where this was implemented. But if we look now at implementation from different cities that are taking into account wheelchair users and public transportation, you can see that this list is getting very short. We only at the end have 3 case studies that are really acknowledging the need for vulnerable travelers. So if we want to create a 50-minute city for all, we should definitely know about their needs. So as intermediate results, inclusiveness, universal accessibility is not very often considered. And also the basic essentials, when we think about this might be very different from one place to the other, and also from one person to the other. And how can we find that out? We have to create a playful approach of interacting with all kind of people, with citizens at the end. And we shouldn't be too scientific. So we have to use storytelling. And you can see, for instance, here, we conducted the method of the flowers of proximity in Madrid. And you can see Ignacio, who's a 70-year-old man from Madrid, who loves his neighborhood, who has lived there his whole life. He still remembers the old days when he used to commute an hour to work, returning home only to sleep. Now he's retired, but sadly his beloved wife passed away. He left him alone at home. His children are busy with their own lives, but he lives nearby and he can visit them on the weekend. However, his days are not boring. Every morning he buys his newspaper at the corner kiosk, where he visits Don Blanca's bakery to buy fresh bread and enjoy good coffee, while he's watching the news. At 11, he's making his way to the community center. His son is there. It's only a 5-minute walk. Sometimes it takes him longer, though. It is worth because he can play parchesi with his friends there. And in the afternoon, on his way home, he sits on the same bench at the park, not just because he gets tired, but he also wants to watch children play. So by this, you can really see a lot and learn a lot about different basic essentials for Ignacio. You can understand how his 50-minute neighborhood is structured and what we should acknowledge as planners. The same is then true for younger kids, for instance. So there's the story about Amelia, who was born in Amsterdam, but the parents are from Lebanon, and she loves to play outside with her friends. So, but I will not tell you the full story here, but if you're interested, I'm happy to share it. Again, you can conduct this to other places. For instance, for Munich, we have Emma, who's a 37-year-old cyclist. So if we want to really plan a livable neighborhood for all, we have to listen to these stories. We have to design a neighborhood that is livable for all. And for this, we have to consider the different needs and preferences. And as I mentioned before, now the flowers come into play with the 50-minute city. So what we have found from Gilsola and Wilhelmsen in Gothenburg, they used a similar approach with flowers, but we coined this approach to the 50-minute concept. So this was the adaptation. We used the 6 social functions from Carlos Moreno. And you can see each flower petal is one of the social functions. So we have one on education, one on entertainment, one on living, working, commerce, and healthcare. And based on this very simple exercise that can be done with everyone, you will always start at in the middle, at your home. This is where you normally also start your trips. And then you say, okay, we have different amenities. This could be your basic essentials. And you say, okay, I will pick the ones that are important for me. For instance, I have to go to the bakery quite often. So I put the bakery and put it on commerce. And in my ideal neighborhood, this is not the neighborhood that I'm actually living in. As I asked you at the beginning, how long does it take you? No, this time you will paint your ideal neighborhood, your wish neighborhood. And then you say, I want a bakery close by because I love fresh bread. I want to get a croissant in the morning. So this should be within 6 minutes walking. And then you put it on this flower petal. And then you do the same for a supermarket. You do the same for a park. You do it for every amenity that is important to you. And based on this, in a very playful way, you can create your own individual neighborhood. And if we have enough people that draw their flowers of proximity, we can take the average from places. And this is what we did for Milan and for Munich. We also did it for Madrid. We did it for Cairo. We did it in the US. So you can do it everywhere. It's very simple. It's very fast. It's also just a 15-minute workshop. And then if you have enough, you can draw some conclusions about the local context. Just to give you a very random example here, if we compare Milan in Italy to Munich in Germany, you can see if you look at commerce, you can see that a bank and ATM needs to be very close for the people in Munich. That's true for Germany as a whole because we Germans are still very old school. So you have to pay lots of things with cash. So you have to have some cash in your pocket to buy groceries, for instance, or to go get some bread or some food. That's not the case in Italy. They're much more advanced. So you can see the bank ATM is further away. But they need to have the hairdresser, the barber shop closer by. And the people in Germany, in Munich, don't care that much about their hair, I guess. But also this tells us a bit more. That's why it's important to discuss with people that are doing the Flowers of Proximity workshop, because when you discuss it, you will get a much deeper knowledge about the local context. For instance, why is it important for Italians to be close at the hairdresser? Because the hairdresser also fulfills a very social function. People like to meet there, like to talk, and like to exchange ideas. And people in Germany don't talk that much while being at a hairdresser. All right, so we tried to use this pen and paper exercise and put it into our accessibility instruments. As Siri mentioned before, within my research group on accessibility planning, we develop a lot of accessibility instruments. So we try to bring that together. And you can see here, you can, by the slider, adjust your preferences, how long you're willing to walk to the next coffee place, to a fast food place, to a nursery, which you can also cross out because at the moment a secondary school, a kindergarten is not important for me. And you go through all the flower petals and at the end have your individual 15-minute score based on the flowers of proximity and the social functions proposed by Carlos Moreno. And you can see here now, this is Munich, everything on OpenStreetMap data. So if you want to have the same in Estonia, that's also possible. And you can see here on the building level, these are the buildings that you might not want to look at, the ones with a very low overall score, but the green ones are the ones that really fit your preferences. For instance, it should be close to a bakery, should be close to a public transport stop, to a park, and then you can check and look for an apartment, for an Airbnb, or get a hotel if you don't know the place in detail. However, another step would be then looking at the housing costs if I'm really able to afford an apartment in that area. So that's a way how we can use a simple approach and then doing a customized accessibility analysis on the 15-minute city. But yeah, so again, we should be aware of what is important when it comes to planning livable neighborhoods or 15-minute cities. And here we came up with planning principles. And these could be steps to build a good garden for our flowers of proximity. And you can see here many of the things that have been mentioned are nothing completely new. But bringing all of this together, I think, can really help us to create more inclusive, livable neighborhoods. So we have to acknowledge the proximity to essential services, as you all mentioned at the beginning of the exercise. This is something that is important. We should also acknowledge proximity to public transport, also to avoid all these crazy conspiracy theories where people claim that the 15-minute city wants to trap them within their own neighborhood and creating 15-minute prisons and stuff like that. This is not the intention of the concept. So if we link it to public transportation, there can be an efficient way of getting from one place to the other. Which is also in line with the previous concept that you might have heard about TOD, transit-oriented development, which also has many of the ideas of the 15-minute city incorporated, like density, which is our next one, or mixed land use. So it's important to plan new neighborhoods that also have different amenities close by, like grocery stores, like supermarkets, like pharmacies, like parks. And then here we stress the importance of creating walkable and cyclable streets that make people or encourage them to use active modes, and make this the priority, make it safe and pleasant. For this, we can also use placemaking. We can use street experiments. We can use tactical urbanism in order to try something to change your neighborhood on the fly and give people the chance to experience it themselves. And we should do this in an inclusive way, in an inclusive manner. And at the end, ubiquity is important. So that means if we think about the 15-minute city, it sounds like a huge task. So how are we able to really achieve that? But at the end, we can also start small. So we can start with one parking spot and create a parklet on it. Parklet is mostly, most of the times, a wooden structure where we can have a coffee, can meet, can socialize, maybe have a library in where you can bring your books and exchange them. But then we can also make it a bit bigger and then stretch it a bit out and create a summer street where we then for one summer say, okay, cars are not allowed to go in anymore, are not allowed to park, but we want to create more public space. We want to make it safe for kids to play, for older to come out and discuss and watch the scenery, the vibrant city life. Then if we think a bit further, we can even stretch that to a neighborhood level and think about something like the super blocks in Barcelona, where they then really found ways of avoiding through traffic and making streets much more human-centered, focusing on active mobility, also focusing on green access, focusing on ways of creating safe urban environments that are also pleasant when it comes to heat shocks, for instance. And for that, we need a city-wide vision. So now I want to share some findings from Munich. So what we did in Munich actually is we created one parklet. So we did a little parklet in 2022 for 3 months. And you can see a little park and some greenery. You can see urban gardening. You see this a little library where people can bring their books and exchange. And you can also see a little bike repair station with a bit of wayfinding. So that was a little thing that we located here right at the corner of one street. The street is called Steinhallstraße, and then we have Enhuberstraße. So we thought, okay, we checked the area and said, hey, this area is very monofunctional. It's very gray. We don't see any or almost no green. Sidewalks are blocked by bikes, but also by scooters, by sharing options. Delivery vehicles are also blocking the way when people order stuff online. So we thought, okay, let's try to work on some of these things. And the mobility department of Munich said, hey, look, we will have an open call and you can change something for 3 months in the city. And we applied for it and thought about, okay, let's fit something in between the summer streets and the super blocks, and we call it mini block. That's what we did in Munich. And what was very important in order to do that, first we did our accessibility analysis, we scanned the area, we also talked to the neighbors, and talking to the neighbors is the most important thing. So the citizen engagement, that people are on board and can also express their wishes, was key in order to avoid a backlash. So we put a poster on every door within those 2 streets and told them, hey, we are on the street. Please let us know what you're missing in your street. What are your concerns? And we collected this, and based on this, we then made this little plan. And you can see here, basically, we thought about, okay, we will remove 21 parking spots, which is a lot for 2 streets, especially in Munich, home of BMW and a very strong car lobby. But we said, okay, we are not just removing them, we are also giving you something. We're giving you 2 mobility points where you get 3 minutes to try something new. Bike sharing, cargo bikes, e-scooters, and also a bit of car sharing was involved. So we said, okay, maybe you're not that car dependent as you think, try something new. And then we also created a green corridor. We added 14 additional trees. Wandering trees from an NGO called Green City. We brought this into the streets, and we created lots of urban gardening and created a ping pong table and other stuff to activate the street. So I will give you a bit of a look here. Welcome everyone, my name is Dr. Benjamin Büttner, and this year again we will host the Remaking the Street summer school here in Munich. This time we were able to upscale from last year, where we just started with 1 parklet, and now you can look all over the street. We have 10 parklets in total, including urban gardening, table tennis, places where you can socialize. So I think it's really nice, and I'm so happy that all the students bring in their effort.
Hello, my name is Florencia. I am doing the EIT Urban Mobility Master's Program. I was in Barcelona for my first year, and I will be going to Aalto in Helsinki next semester. I came to the summer school of Remaking the Streets because I think it's very important to make the streets a lot more citizen-centric rather than car-centric. I really think that this brings more equality to the society.
My name is Tomas Enriquez. I go by Tommy. I am part of the EIT Urban Mobility Masters, and I did my first year at UPC in Barcelona. Next year I'll be going to Eindhoven in the Netherlands. Today we're leaving the classroom, and I'm taking a physical role to be able to transform these streets and turn them into the beautiful places we want to see. These small street experiments are very critical to help us develop how we move forward with our cities. Without these experiments, we wouldn't be able to collect the data to understand what changes are actually impactful and which changes are not. And as well, this helps us to gain some social capital so that we can say, look at how beautiful this experiment is. Imagine if it was permanent. Imagine if we could make even better improvements to our cities and invest some real money to make sure that we create places we really love.
This year we integrated lots of different plants in the parklets, like the blueberries we have here, or very special, the wandering tree alley, which is integrated into the parklet that you can see here.
One of the lessons I've learned from being a part of this here is just the planning procedure and how you can really just go ahead and start planning start with the application process and see what you can bring together, and it might turn into something beautiful like this that you see here. I think it would be great if everybody looked around at the streets that they live in and imagined something better and just go for it.
So if you're interested in topics like this, 3D experiments, tactical urbanism, placemaking, come and join us next year. So we will definitely be back and then might overtake the whole city. So I was getting in trouble with the last sentence here, so I should not repeat that anymore. But if you're interested in this, we still will do the summer school this year, remakingthestreet.com if you're interested. There's still the early bird fee, so the first week is in Munich where we'll do something similar, and the next week will be in Rotterdam with our dear colleagues from Humankind. You might have spotted Leo Steinberg there. So 2 weeks, if you're interested, I'm happy to share the link with you as well. So coming back to the citizen engagement, what we did when we established this, we threw a party. We did a mini blog party where we invited people from all over the world that shared their experiences. For instance, Xavi Mattia, the former chief architect of Barcelona, who implemented the superblocks, gave a talk and how Munich can learn from Barcelona. We had our colleagues from Paris there, Carlos Moreno, who gave an input about the 50-minute city. And we had Marco de Brommelschut, the cycling professor as well. That was interesting for us as academics, but what was more important, I think, was the German Straßenfest, because here we were able to interact with the neighbors and really ask them about their needs, what they like, and also what they dislike, which is very important. So you can get some impressions here, how we use this street during those events. And then how we created those mobility hubs that I mentioned before, where we added new cycling racks, some bike repair stations. We created here a temporary redesign. We added some ways of sharing information. And you can also see here a bit, there are the flowers of proximity all over this little mini block. So we use this in order to educate a bit in a playful way, because they are colorful, they speak to people, they make them curious. So people take a look and then see and might learn a bit about the 15-minute concept. So you can see this, we used it also with children. So you can see in Munich, we tried it within our mini block, and then to start with children, a summit happened in Bratislava the first time in 2024. We were there at the Living Street and handcrafted flowers with the kids. And this was also done in La Plata in Argentina this year. But you can also use it with old people and then understand about their basic essentials, which is important. These basic essentials are very different to the ones from kids. So at the end, our list is never complete. So we constantly learn from the input from different people. So you can see with older people, last year it was used by my former student, Camila Baquero in Curitiba in Costa Rica. And then here you can see how Cecilia Silva did the flowers of proximity exercise with students, international students in Munich. And with my colleague Mohamed Abuela, I did them also in Cairo in Egypt. And you can also then see about the different power dynamics between gender, female, male. So it was very interesting to see. To conclude, in order to enable the transition to more proximity and human-centered planning, we have to bring along the people, the neighbors, citizens. So we really have to listen to them. We have to learn from them. And if we don't do this, we will again create lots of backlash and create lots of problems at the end, because if they don't want the changes that we propose, then this will not work. So we have to develop this together. And for this, we need a simple, accessible language and maybe even positive narrative. So we have to stress on the positive aspects. For instance, with the Steinhuber mini blog, the first message was not we're taking away 21 parking spots from you, but we're giving you new mobility options. You get 3 minutes. There are 2 mobility hubs. You might want to try a cargo bike. And this is something that we have to do. Then the co-design and co-creation need to be aligned to the needs of neighbors. So that's very important. For that, we have to create new formats. And the flowers of proximity is one of them, but there are many different ones where we can really learn from them. And these simple playful tools can then empower a common understanding what is actually needed around the corner. So what people want or need to have close by. And this can create a social cohesion and a sense of community. But for that, we have to be open. And that's it from my side. If you want to learn more about flowers of proximity, there's a website, flowersofproximity.com. And we also did a mapping of 50-minute city practices with DOT. It's a worldwide study. Here are some QR codes. And we did a thought leadership study with EIT Urban Mobility. If you're interested, you can scan the QR codes. And if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. And I'm looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Benjamin. Then it's already 2 questions in online, but and I think a lot of questions here also. But I take this this and ask the first question myself, because I think otherwise I don't have a possibility afterwards.
Good.
I think this for me this I think it was like really interesting presentation, and I like this concrete examples what you also proposed here to show for example, Estonian municipalities to use some of this to try or test their region or municipalities. But I think this flower concept of this 15-minute city, for me, it was a little related to the broader concept of balancing the life of different areas. I think there is also the similar concept that how satisfied the people are for this family life, or friends, or this entertainment and this finances. And this is for this came the questions that have you studied or how you think that is it related, that if it's this amenities is near to your home, for example, this entertainment or sports activities are more near, then the people are more satisfied in their life also with this area. Or have you also studied the relatedness of proximity and how satisfied the people are for this functions or this area of life of them?
Yeah, very good point, Siri. Thank you for addressing this. Short answer, no. But a long answer, we believe that there's a strong link. But we have not really looked into that yet. The thing is, because the flowers of proximity starts as an individual exercise. And then we try to create a community flower out of that, which is the average of times. So we can only, and at the beginning, it's a very qualitative approach. So the flowers of proximity will start a discussion, will make people think about how their neighborhood should look like. And this might, this will sketch a dream neighborhood, which is not the actual neighborhood. So they cannot really say how much happier this would make them. But still, we should look into that. and look at the actual neighborhoods in proximity and see how satisfied people are. But the flowers of proximity actually is drawing a new reality as a first step for future planning.
And I think the other case is also the frequency, how they use this functions, that if it is very near, but if they don't use it, then it doesn't matter. Then it's how this like real activities is related to this proximity or the accessibility.
That's a very good point. At the end, we started the workshop and trying making people fill out more or less all kind of activities until we realized that doesn't make any sense, because some of the activities are not relevant to them, or some of them they just maybe they go to the cinema twice a year. So it does not really play a role if it's close by or not. So these points are very important and interesting to look at. So you're totally right. Okay,
then I give the floor or the possibility to ask questions here. To have some questions, they can take the microphones.
I can ask. Thank you, Benjamin, for your very insightful overview of the 15-minute city and what you've been doing in Munich. It's very interesting. I had a question more generally about the concept of the 15-minute city. That how do you see that public transport fits into the idea of the 15-minute city? Usually the discussion is around walking and cycling. Public transport's like an aftersight, as you showed as well in several cities. The plans don't include public transport. And even like very short distances can often take longer than 15 minutes on public transport. So do you think it's part of the 15-minute concept or not as much?
Thanks, Martin. I think very good point again, but I think it needs to be part. It wasn't part at the beginning, or also with Carlos Moreno it was mentioned. So he clearly thought about it, but the focus was, as you said, on walking and cycling. Nevertheless, I think, especially if you go further out, public transportation is extremely important, especially if we want to create less car-dependent areas. It needs to be included, in my opinion. It can, at the end, public transport still is the backbone of our regional urban planning. So I would be strongly in favor of having 15-minute neighborhoods next to or around public transport stops. Mostly public transport stops with high-speed rail, if that's possible. If we go to another context, to Latin America, for instance, it can also be a BRT, bus rapid transit. But if we create in the direction of transit-oriented development, 15-minute or 20-minute neighborhoods around these stops, then I think we are going in the right direction. So that you don't have to jump on the train or on a bus for going to the next supermarket. You can walk or cycle. You find your pharmacy, you find the kindergarten, you find the park. But if you need to go to a cinema, to a theater, to the university, to your workplace, you can still jump on the train and get there within a reasonable time.
Thank you. Okay.
Yes. Hi, Benjamin, from here as well. Really great talk, and I like your positive approach about that, and always finding solutions. How can we actually change the life in local contexts? I have 2 pages of questions, so I start with 2 questions. Also related to Martin's question, and your response was that the neighborhoods, the 15-minute city neighborhoods, could be created along the public transit stops, and especially these high-speed or bus rapid transit stops, etc., which still in a way like segregates our urban areas, don't it? Or doesn't it? Because we have loads of suburban neighborhoods with very low accessibility to public transit and also very poor proximity to different types of services. So next to those like tactical urbanism solutions on streets or very close to our homes, or next to those public transit stop-oriented like service centers, how can we actually apply the 15-minute city context to transform our suburbanized urban regions, those existing forms of urban structures that we have and which are problematic?
Yeah, very good question, Aga. Thanks for raising this. This is a tricky one, obviously, but a very relevant one because especially in Europe, most of our space is already built up and maybe not built up in the way as we wish to have it. And I think it's pointing in that direction. What the 15-minute city concept also includes is temporal uses. And this could be something. For instance, we saw that I showed at the second to last slide, I believe, our 50-minute mapping study, where we examined around 100 policies all over the world in line with the 15-minute city. And then we had deep dives with cities and asking them, hey, do you use this concept actually in your daily life, and so on and so forth. And we found interesting examples from Ghent in Belgium. And they said, yes, we never call it the 15-minute city, but it's very much in line with that. For instance, the library that people might not use it every time we open it for the citizens to have different uses there. We even give there meets a choir and they practice. And then, for instance, in Paris, they use the schoolyards. So they opened the school, and at the end, when there are no school kids anymore, you can use it for a pop-up market. You can use it as a gym where people exercise. And so the build-up structure that is not 24/7 in use can be used at different times with different purposes. So we need to be more flexible here, and pop-up activities can come into play. And if they are very successful, and also one question in the chat is pointing in that direction, you could also make it permanent and see about the actual needs of the neighborhood. And so we see that with pop-up markets. We see it with running classes or sport activities and these kind of things. So yeah, but it's a tricky one, but we also have to question the use of different places and then see if there is some other possibilities.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, great answer to this tricky question. I think the second one was quite then related to that, actually. Or have you noticed this 15-minute city concept actually in real urban planning practice, or perhaps even like not regional planning practice, but in this planning practice that includes more than dense urban neighborhoods, rather urban functional regions. So next to those like street interventions or pop-up uses and temporality of spaces, so that how does that concept now fits into this very classical zoning practice of urban planning, where we take the neighborhood approach and mark out whether the function of this area or is this or that. Can you see a change in planning practice when we now talk about 15-minute cities?
Yes, I think so. I believe so. Also linked to our deep dives that we did with the 15-minute mapping. When we talked to the planning practitioners, they were aware of the concept, and they thought it makes lots of sense. And the zoning approach created lots of issues also back in the days. and many places are still suffering under this. But I think there is more flexibility now. Also, COVID helped in that regard, where people really reconsidered the use of our space in cities. And lots of pop-up activities happened during that time, but then also many of them became permanent. And those pop-up things also regulation-wise helped us to find new ways of achieving this. In an academic point of view, for us as researchers, the 15-minute city really helped us to finally get the message across when it comes to accessibility planning. Because we've been, for the last decade or even longer, I was trying to make people from cities understand concept of accessibility. They still have their transport planners, they still have their land use and urban planners, and they don't talk to each other, they don't align their planning. And accessibility brings that together, actually. But finally, with the 15-minute city, they got it, and we can use that now to make a more integrated urban transport planning, thanks to that, which focuses more on proximity than on actually mobility enhancements.
Then if we take some more questions, then you can take your 2 pages. But do you have here some questions?
We can have a special session, Agil. Okay, I'll discuss.
No questions. Then I ask from what is on the web that how long did the whole project took? I think it was related to this summer school.
Yes.
And was for building, but when did you started collaboration with locals so they would be on board? It is more like this participants engagement topic, I think.
The whole process. It's an excellent question, Marit. This was problematic, to be honest. So the whole process started with Munich being the host for the so-called IAA. The IAA is the International Auto Exhibition. And every 2 years, the car world comes to Munich and they invade the whole city. So also public spaces. And there is a huge pavilion from Porsche, which has like, I think, a 30-meter long Porsche. I'm not kidding, where you can go in and look at the new innovations. BMW is there, BYD from China is there. So everyone is in the city and really in the city. So all the public spaces can be used, not all of them, but many of them. And then the city, the planning department, the mobility department said, look, we don't want to just give this impression that the city is only here for cars, for the car lobby. So we will create a mobility alternative. And this is when they said, okay, we will launch this call where we will stress more active mobility in public spaces. And here we applied and then received the green light to do this mini block. This mini block was built during the summer school, that's correct. We received the green light, I think like 1 month before the summer school started. So that means we also didn't have lots of time to really get in touch with the neighbors. So we had to rush this. Unfortunately, it would make much more sense to get in touch with them much earlier to really take into account all their needs. But we had to do this on the fly because the budget was not sure if we will get it anyway. So at the end, we only had 1 month in between getting the citizens involved and then building it together with the students. The mini block was then there for 3 months. So it was a temporary street intervention, which is now being used by my dear colleague Anna Rivas who's running our street experiments activities, and she's creating a PhD thesis out of that about the public acceptance of these interventions. Yeah, so that's a long answer to your question. But again, it would be better to bring locals on board earlier and then constantly. So the idea is also to inform them about this, to ask them about feedback. We had also these little mailboxes at our parklets, at the wooden structures, where they can always put something in. And with the people that were not really happy about it, which was the minority, but a very loud minority, we also had expert interviews in order to understand them what is problematic in their point of view. So that's what I mean. The locals should be there through the whole process, actually.
Also my questions that how satisfied this the locals was, or they was more against of this, or what is the participation, or this were there some conflicts of them, and which these are? And there is also, I think, a huge topic of what to discuss.
These are the spicy questions that you are addressing, but it was the satisfaction rate was 80% of the people living in the street, so it was very high. We were happy about this, but there were some people that disliked it, and they let us know, which is also good. One person approached me on the street. This was like the first day after we implemented it. I was walking in the street, and then she came and said, "Hey, you're Benjamin Büttner." So she knew me by name, which was, I was a bit surprised, and I asked her, "Yes, and who are you?" "Yeah, I saw you in the newspaper. What you're doing here is crazy. For you, it's just another experiment, but for us, it's about our livelihood. It's about survival." And I told her, "How comes?" "Yeah, you're removing my parking spot. I have to use my car going to my job. I have to commute. And I'm paying for this." And you know how much people have to pay in Munich per year for on-street parking? You can get a license, and it's 30 euros. 30 euros for 360 days, which is next to nothing. And I told her it will only be short, and there's additional parking. So there's additional parking close by. So everyone was still able to find a parking spot. But yeah, the parking obviously created some tension. And then also the ping pong table. Some people loved it and some hated it. And yeah, it creates a bit of noise, obviously. So we had to then again put on science, as proper Germans do. These are the rules. You're not allowed to play after 7 or 8 in the evening, stuff like that. So, but at the end, we were able to get everything more or less under control.
And then is one more question. I think you have somehow also answered it, but maybe you have something to add. How the temporary amenities become permanent?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. That was a bit addressed, but after this experiment, the neighbors started a petition themselves about new trees, that they need new trees in the street, and they wanted to have 2 parklets permanently. So they will now get more trees. So this was successful. And with the parklet, we have to see. Also depending, because at the moment in Munich, it's not common to have a parklet that is there the whole year. Normally these are summer things, and during winter they've been removed and back to normal, basically. But yeah.
Thank you. It went so fast, this discussion time, that it is now is over. And sorry, again, you can't answer anymore. But I think we can find some other way to do this discussion further somewhere, sometime. And thank you very much, Benjamin, again for this today's lecture and this very interesting discussion. And
My pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you. And the next lecture will take place next Thursday, and then Ageborn from University of Tartu speaks about how does our travel environment affects us. And this lecture will be Estonian, but the next lecture in English will be in April 24th, and then it is given by Professor Kai Axhausen from ETH Zurich, and he will talk about dilemma of transport planning, is e-bike city a possibility. See you soon.